Okay, so let's talk about Alien Romulus. So this movie came out this year, just recently in the last couple weeks. It was in the theater. I missed it, but I had a chance to see it at University of Southern California, so USC Norris, with a Q&A with the director and the writer, and I'll give you some thoughts on that as well. So what we'll do is we'll talk about the movie. I will, in the same fashion as any of the thoughts, this isn't about reviewing it, giving it a score, or anything like that. It's just about whether these movies are worth seeing or whether they're not. And I think if you watch enough of some of my thoughts on these things, I will give you reasons for both on any of the films that I see. And and it's just a lover of cinema and also a filmmaker slash aspiring filmmaker myself. I'll give you some of those thoughts, but we'll definitely talk about some of the things that the director Fede Alvarez had talked about, and he was super engaging. But before we get into any of that, let's check out the trailer. This is the final trailer for Alien Romulus. Let's do it.
Are you sure you want to do this?
That's a beautiful shot.
There she is.
You want to break in and steal highly regulated equipment.
This could be our only ticket out of here. Should be in and out in 30 minutes.
Welcome to the Romulus Space Station.
This place gives me the creeps. What the hell is this?
I don't know.
What the fuck was that? Yo!
Stop playing around, man. Just get up.
I'm not playing around. There's something in the water.
What do you mean there's something in the
I don't know.
water?
There's just something in the fucking water.
This is so nasty.
Run.
Are you alright?
Tomorrow. I don't know what to do.
Whatever comes, we'll face it together.
Let's go.
Impact event in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Get tickets now. Okay, so Alien Romulus, directed by Fede Alvarez. This was an interesting take. So my history with the Alien franchise goes back all the way to when I was a kid. So I'll start it with that. I remember seeing Alien for the first time, and I was 8 years old, living in Saudi Arabia, and we had it on Laserdisc, and I remember that iconic shot of the egg and that beautiful text, the beautiful font that they had, and in space, no one can hear you scream. And it was, it was an unnerving film, obviously, watching it back then. And then I remember, and my dad being a huge sci-fi fan as well, we came back to California on vacation, and Aliens had come out. And I was not old enough to be able to see it from the theater, but when my dad and his friend came back from the theater to see it without me, I remember him being so excited, and just like he came back and he was like, God, that was good. And it was like, I wanted to see it so badly. So when we finally did see it, when I finally did see James Cameron's Aliens, I was blown away in such a different way. And it was such a different movie from the first one. That first movie introduces these these space truckers who happen to accidentally take on this thing, which happened to be the face hugger, and, the gist of the story. There's the first one being this isolated kind of, haunted house in space motif with heavy, sexuality mixed in with violence as the aesthetic, with using H.R. Giger's work, Dan O'Bannon's writing, and the history with how Alien got made. There's a really great documentary about Alejandro Jodorowsky and how he was making Dune, and kind of how it, because of that movie not being made, but everybody that was kind of wrapped up into the creation of this movie that was going to be made, this ultimate sci-fi operatic piece, never got made, but then the artists got put onto different things. So H.R. Giger was supposed to do this, the Harkonnen world for Dune, and we get echoes of that through all these different movies and his influential work, and Ridley Scott's just amazing insight. And this was an early film for him, and a low budget film for him, doing the first Alien movie, and obviously a masterclass, spawned this amazing response. James Cameron writing this kind of like spec script that he got to do as a follow-up to Alien, and how to expand that universe, and then we get Alien 3 by David Fincher, who is another just incredible filmmaker. You got three filmmakers that are just like masters of the craft approaching this. And of course, with David Fincher being, his first feature film, he ran into some trouble. Doing this movie, he ran into some trouble. All kinds of things happened. You can read up about it, but mostly there was a lot of story issues that bumped up against the studios and things like that. And to what extent, what is real, what is not, what's true, I don't honestly know. It's this things that I knew growing up with. And there was a William Gibson script that I actually read the comic for, and it was a very different take on Alien 3. In a lot of ways, I did like it better, but at least in the movie, there was this really great feeling that I knew I got from it. And, some of the CG work was early, and David Fincher, being somebody who is very technologically forward, he used that on creating these kind of like dog, leopard-like, aliens in the third movie. But what rang really, really true that I loved about the third movie was that there was definitely this nihilistic take on it, is probably the best way to describe it, right? And I believe also in the Q&A with Fede Alvarez, I think he also says this, he agrees with the same thing. It's this, that the third movie it did feel special because it represented that kind of generation. But then, of course, you've got Alien 4, and I remember, and I won't go through the whole legacy of all of this because I want to get to this movie, but I just want to give you a little bit of context because it does relate to, some thoughts that I have about this particular movie. With Alien 4, I remember reading when Ain't It Cool News was still a thing. I remember reading Ain't It Cool News, and there was a script for what apparently John Woo was supposed to do at some point. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but I remember reading this, and there was a script that did get released. And is it a fan script? Was it a leaked script? Who knows? If you are watching this and you do know for sure or whatever, leave in the comments, or let me know, because that movie, had also this kind of like excitement around, wow, John Woo doing a sci-fi, doing something in the Alien universe. Like, of course, and this was during a time of his heyday, like, Broken Arrow, Face Off, for the American movies, and Hard Target, The Killer, and, many others. I'm a huge John Woo fan, and I wanted to see that movie made. When I read the script, there was the iconic John Woo moments in it. There was in space, they were cultivating, or they were growing weed on weed farms. And there was this character who was, you see the alien that was like going through the weed fields. And then you see one of the characters donning, 2 guns and like, trying to escape this kind of like chase scene. Anyways, there were a lot of iconic moments, I think, that just, was in the script that I thought was super interesting. But what was interesting was that obviously Jean-Pierre Jeunet and Caro, like, all huge fans of. I loved their whimsical movies from before, these kind of like dark fantasy tales in The City of Lost Children and Delicatessen. They had a very unique take, and also love the DP. And when they did Alien 4, I was also very excited to see it. And I remember seeing it in the theater and was just very puzzled, because there were things that I really did like about it, but I think I don't know what it was a take. It was a take that I thought could have leaned even further into expanding the Alien universe in a strange way. But I really did like the play on what happens when you intermingle DNA and, all the freaks of, that of nature, I guess, the abominations of trying to expedite the natural process of evolution. And some of those themes were really interesting. Okay. So I will discount the Alien vs. Predator movies, but I did read and I have the Alien Earth War comics, the Aliens vs. Predator, the 4-part miniseries comics that were actually really, really good, and they were different takes from the movies. And the movies, the movies were what they were. It's funny because nobody really kind of like, includes them as part of the canon. They are just kind of like this like Elseworld version of the Alien universe, I guess. But Ridley Scott comes out with Prometheus, and he wants to go back to discovering, what they call the engineers and who that was sitting in the cockpit in the first Alien movie when they get onto that moon and, discover the eggs. And that was an amazing take. Like, yes, let's go into expanding the world of Alien. And I remember watching Prometheus in the theater and was just blown away. It was so beautiful. They had a very different feel because they talked about, the themes of, our beginnings, these religious undertones of, faith and science and the pursuit of the corporate world and the pursuit of like the personal journey. And, what all that means in the universe when we can meet our own makers, what happens when we meet God, and this is obviously very heavy, huge. It's a heavy, huge load, and who better to do it than somebody like Ridley Scott, who had done, something that was similar in the Blade Runner universe. I'm going to sidestep for one minute because I don't want to forget this thought. Nobody mentioned the Blade Runner Easter egg in Alien Romulus, but there's one shot in Romulus in the cockpit, and there is the iconic unicorn, origami unicorn, sitting in the cockpit. Whether I saw that or whether that was an Easter egg that was meant to be there. There is, and I'll get into this in a second, but obviously there's a tie-in that Ridley Scott has once said he's always imagined the Blade Runner universe and the Alien universe kind of being in the same story. So, anyways, go back to Prometheus. So, with Prometheus, it felt very much like a prologue. It felt like rather than, I think some people had said that they were taking this into a different direction, which I didn't quite feel that. What I felt was that they're expanding this universe, and that's what it is. They're in space. They're traveling. We got to see that there are, like in James Cameron's movies, it's like they kind of say something along the lines of like, another bug hunt or something like that. And that was something that Fede also talked, or actually his co-writer, his writer talked also about this mention of it as they were like looking through the Xenopedia or whatever it was, and it just reminded me that like, look, the world, the universe is a much bigger thing, and I was very, very excited. I still am, because I hope that that they can take the mantle and keep expanding it out, because I think to build this IP out in a healthy way, we want to see more. We want to, there are horrors and wonders of the universe that are still yet to be discovered, and I think that this is a really gritty, gritty might be one word for it, but just like awe-inspiring way to tackle the grounded reality of the everyman, whether it be like the colonists that go on and try to colonize space, how we travel in space. As humans, we're not meant in our form right now to travel into space, and so there are the horrors of that, also the horrors of the unknown, obviously, and I think that's where Prometheus was starting to try to go into, was going into this idea that there is this other substance, this black goo is like kind of a reset agent, and it's chaos. It's like it's kind of like chaos. It's like chaos neutral, where this thing could be used, to build life and seed planets, or it could be used for complete annihilation. And we don't have, as humans, if we were to discover something like this, there would be chaos, because we don't know the technology, we don't know the science behind it and things like that. So it would probably get out of hand in those ways. And maybe there's the questions about, well, what happens if it does mix with humans? What happens if it mixes with another, a couple other life forms, and what happens with that? So I like the idea of the black goo. Love the idea of the engineers and what they looked like and how they kind of represented themselves. And also on Prometheus, we landed on the moon. We landed on a moon that happened to have more of the more military engineers, is kind of the way that I took it. So it's like, do they represent all of the engineers? Probably not. We kind of started to discover that a little bit in Alien Covenant, where there was this other planet that was, that had been seeded as well. And they were, engineer kind of looking, right? Because they were all bald and, but they didn't quite look like the engineers. So it just like was another kind of human-like civilization, and looked like, I think I remember Ridley Scott talking about it, where it was kind of like they were at the stage of like early Roman Empire, at their development. And then here comes AI. Here comes David to destroy it all. And so we have the horrors of our own creation, and that being robots and AI. And I love diving into a lot of these things, because each of these characters, each of these, beings and whatnot, they're these really great representations that we get to kind of ponder about. And we talk about the dangers of them, like the dangers of AI and the dangers of robots. And it is almost kind of like the black goo in a sense, because they could be used for ultimate good or ultimate evil. We are creating something in our likeness that will probably surpass us, and what will that look like? What human elements do we give them? If we give them the seed of wonder and creation, the what if, then they could destroy a planet, which is kind of like what David did when he dropped the black goo on all of those humans. And and it wasn't quite an Alien Covenant, but there was a short film that showed what happened to the character Shaw and David as they kind of took over the engineer ship or whatever and went off. That last shot of them kind of like speeding off was so amazing. It bookended Prometheus in a way that was like, the first scene we got to see the engineers, and then if depending on the cut that you see, the theatrical cut didn't have it, but there was, when they released it out on home video, whatever, the Blu-ray DVD market, they included the scene where they actually show these like more different engineers that were kind of dressed in these like humble robes, and they looked like they were kind of like the elders, is kind of what they looked like they represented, and they were presenting that engineer as the sacrificial engineer to seed this planet, which is Earth, right? And so we got to see more engineers, and and what that might have looked like, and then as they take that massive huge ship and they just kind of like leave to let this planet grow, we're ended with a human taking over the engineer ship and going off. I loved the possibility, the what if possibility of that. I was a little bit disappointed in how it ended, obviously, because spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Alien Covenant, it doesn't end well for Elizabeth Shaw because of David trying to reverse engineer, it seemed, this kind of like ultimate creature, and he does all kinds of nefarious things or whatever, and poor Elizabeth Shaw. So Alien Covenant was kind of a hit and a miss for me, because it seemed like it was, if Prometheus was this prologue, Alien Covenant just seemed like chapter 1 on its way to something else, but now we have a new cast of characters in it, and then we kind of, get some fan service back to the xenomorphs, because apparently everybody wants to see the xenomorphs again. And so that will bring me to Alien Romulus. And I say that in that kind of in that way because Alien Romulus was very much a well done, good movie, and I am a fan of Fede Alvarez's horror work. He did such a great job with the Evil Dead remake, and also Don't Breathe, and so I really liked what he's done with those two movies. He knows the genre very well. He knows how to build tension, and the ideas of like the jump scare and things like that. And he mentioned one time, like in the Q&A, about, somebody had asked, how to develop those jump scares. And he has this like formula of like, it's like, when you are getting ready to be hit and you're told you're going to be hit, you're going to tense up, you're going to hold your breath, you're going to like anticipate it. And then, but at the moment you release is when they hit you. And that's, and that was interesting because obviously he's thought very much about how to structure, these things and make it, having it be a good time for people. And he did pull those off. And in Alien Romulus. So you have, the jump scares. And the only critique, and I'll just get this one out of the way, of Alien Romulus is that we have kind of, this movie takes place in between Alien and Aliens, and so there's a little bit of like retro fanfare that we're given, beautifully shot. beautiful scenes that ground the story very well and ground the aesthetics very well. I think it does do a thing where it pays fan service to the things that it seems like people want to see. Like, it's, they don't have to be space truckers, but they are like colony workers or like colony mine workers, right? And they're a younger group that are trying to make ends meet. And so they go to this derelict on their own, ship, this science ship. And then we are then greeted with the idea of, like, here we are back in the original idea of a haunted house in space. And they're, and then they have to, deal with what's coming from there. So in that way, that I say that this isn't so much Fede Alvarez's fault, but it is just the nature of the story. You're either in it, or from my point of view, where I've grew up with the Alien, universe, and I'm sure he did too, and many others, right? And we, the expectations you have with that, you're going to be bringing with you. And the ones that I would have loved to have seen is an expansion in the way that Prometheus did, where we get to see more of the universe. And I honestly, I'm over the xenomorphs in a way. I think the xenomorphs are, the what they represent are these, like, the perfect being, whatever that means. But perfect in what way? Like, because they have, acid for blood, like hydrochloric acid for blood. So if you were to kill them, obviously you would pay the price as well if you, got acid on you. Ultimate killing machines, and they have these in the way that these things are made are incredibly primal in the human way of our fears of birth and rape and the exaggeration and malformation of of gender, with these, like, very large, grotesque, vaginal looking things like the eggs, or these kind of like testicular, face huggers that also have this thing where they basically rape your face and then they seed you and they choke you at the same time. So, like, obviously Giger's undertones on this, it plays onto our primal fears and our natures, and Fede Alvarez and their team did an amazing job with paying homage to that. So yes, those things were done in the Alien movies, and those were such a large focus. The you say the horrors of birth, but like just it plays off of that, in even in Prometheus it did, right? And so they pay homage to that. I won't get into details with this because there are some, and I'll get into some of the things that I like, but I will not give it away. And because I think that this is a movie worth seeing. But just having that caveat of, like, I wanted to like this movie a lot more. I did appreciate this movie a lot, and I thought it was a good time. It was a very good movie, and I thought it was satisfying in the in the narrative box that it was told. But I also wanted a lot more. When I walk away from it, I wanted to know that there was, the bigger universe to discover, and maybe this is a prologue for Fede. I hope it does really well, because it deserves it, and we get to see more of what they wanted to do, and what they want to do, maybe in ideas in the future, and and there's so many things that I think that could really play up, and I'll give you some ideas here. So I always saw the Alien universe as kind of like Ridley Scott's Star Wars in a way. or Dune, but in that sci-fi operatic fantasy-ish world, this is, to me, Ridley Scott's sci-fi opus, and it makes sense that Blade Runner would fit into the Alien universe. It makes sense. We have these, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation and everything for the company. So there's this nefarious overlord company that kind of like rules space, and their pursuit of science at all costs, even to the human cost. And the bigger, the story that we get to, the point of view that we get to take is at the ground level, from where everybody is, and that is the worker. That is the blue collar worker aspect of things. And not for every movie, obviously there are science officers and and other things too. But like it in the few of the movies, even in Aliens, we have like the military presence, but we have the boots on the ground take on it, and it's a great perspective to take, because it is the one that can ground us to the world and make it feel real. And it also allows us to discover as they discover, and that makes it very exciting to watch, because we know just as much as they know in the moment. And how do you deal with something like this in the moment? But I think there's lots of other ways that we can expand on this story. So, yeah, to me, this is kind of like the Ridley Scott Star Wars universe, where there's AI robots that feel very human, and we'll just throw Blade Runner into this. Replicants being this version of this too, where there's this other corporation, and the Tyrell Corporation, that is developing these robots in a different way, these replicants who have a shelf life. And what does that look like when we can only live for a certain amount of time, and there is a cutoff switch. They're used to do things that humans can't do, because they're obviously synthetic. In a way, they're more human than human because of that. And obviously those ideas of mortality, ring true in the Blade Runner universe. But you tie that in to, aliens of all kinds, right? So we have the xenomorphs, but those are really the only thing that we knew about. And then here we are, like, meddling with DNA as our corporations are doing it. We're creating monsters through science, because we're trying to expedite the evolutionary process, and just how horrific that can be. And also on a fundamental level, like, the mother-child scenarios of those, like, because they need, human embryos, and, they're trying to make humans be able to travel in space, and doing it in these ways. And now they discovered, like, the black goo, so what does that mean? And so then we have engineers, right? So the engineers being, the creator of us. Then what's beyond that? We can go to the engineer's home planet, which is what I had thought that was going to be a follow-up to Prometheus, is that, in Alien Covenant, they just stop on another, Earth-like place on their way to what they were trying to get back to, going back to the engineer's home planet. And from what I was reading, there was supposed to be this kind of like Paradise Lost, like this John Milton Paradise Lost, kind of inspired story, maybe, that we would see for what the engineer's home planet would be. But there's obviously a massive amount of world building, and, to do it well, you really need to kind of, take baby steps into those, rather than just exploding the universe and saying, well, there's hundreds of aliens out there. Because I feel like that would be overload, and we would start to lose the thing that makes the alien worlds so good, is how intimate they are, how intimate they feel. And I think in Alien Romulus they do a good job of keeping that, but it is kind of like a highlight reel of all of the Alien movies, and Prometheus included, and Alien Covenant. It is a highlight reel of all those things that we loved from those movies, kind of put into this movie is the best way to describe it. Good, bad, it's up to you. I enjoyed it, I really did, and seeing it at USC in the Norris Theater is a gorgeous theater. The sound is and picture quality are fantastic. I watched it in the anamorphic 2:1 aspect ratio, and there is an IMAX screening, which is obviously more of a square 4:3 aspect ratio. And I remember Fede was talking about how he loved watching that version because it reminded him of the VHS, watching it on VHS, which is great. I love that. So though that it was a great presentation, a great Q&A. Alex Ago that moderated it. So it was very much if there was a way to see this movie, that was the way to see it, and obviously with a beautiful Q&A by the creators. So that's kind of how I saw this movie. It was good. What I feel what would make it great is I want to lean more into starting to maybe not. You don't necessarily have to directly say, okay, now here's where they cross over. Here's where Blade Runner universe, comes into it, and we don't. Now we have replicant hunters, and we've got replicants living alongside the robots and the AI that that are in this universe, built by Weyland Yutani, and then the versions of the replicants built by the Tyrell Corporation. You can have that. You don't necessarily have to go into that. I would love to see in the future the expansion of this universe by let's move away from the xenomorphs and embrace more of the horrors and awe of the unknown, and do it in a way that can still thematically stay true to this IP, and tell those grandiose stories to expand out what the Alien universe kind of means. We could still have those elements of sexuality and horror. We can have those primal horrors in it for sure, because look, if there is this version of this world where we go off and we discover these xenomorph beings that are biomechanical, that is horrific. But we can also see engineers that are modeled after Da Vinci's work, like David, and start to delve into those things. And I'm reminded, actually, they canceled the series, which I'm very sad about, but there was a series called Raised by Wolves that was on HBO Max, also produced and directed by Ridley Scott's son, and produced by Ridley Scott's company. And it had a lot of these elements that very much Raised by Wolves could definitely fit into the Alien universe. And it does so in a way that pays homage to faith versus science, and dangers of AI or robots, artificial life, and also the kind of biblical myths of creation and what that looks like in the far future. Do these things cycle, in history? So I think Raised by Wolves is a great complementary piece to this series. So I would highly recommend checking that out. And like I said, they canceled it after season 2, which is a bummer, because it was very good. It was a slow burn, very well told, story, sci-fi story that had a lot of really, really great ideas in it. and would love to see to see the Alien universe kind of expand in that direction, where there are primal creatures. Maybe there's a planet that has primal creatures, and they're at the dinosaur level, but they're not dinosaurs. Maybe there are these other creatures, and Raised by Wolves kind of goes into that a little bit in its own way, in its beautiful way. Like, I'll just mention, like, a really quick one is like this massive snake creature that's in it, and there's an AI. Then what does that look like if that thing were able to procreate with AI? What does that look like? And so the what if has always been at the forefront and the top of anything that deals with sci-fi, but also, there needs to be the human element of any good sci-fi story, and that in horror deals with the primal natures and the fears of mortality. And in space, it's just a heightened response to that. And that's how we can make it feel grounded. So I would love to see that. I would love to see what it looks like. It could be a representation, like the black goo could be like the midichlorians. It could be like that, what that is in the Star Wars universe. And it could be this like thing that can, we've seen the destructive aspect of it in these movies. Well, what happens if we actually were successful in some way that we're able to put us on the map to be competitive against the other, the other beings, life forms, what have you, in that world. And then we start to get into, a little bit of Star Trek territory. So that excites me. That excites me in a way that I think that I'm wanting it to go. So those are my expectations, or at least, hopes that I would love to see this world go into. And maybe we will in the future. So anyways, Romulus, Alien Romulus, obviously the name, having the, taken from Remus and Romulus, and that, the biblical story of that. I think this is worth a watch. It is worth checking out. It's great for people that are also new to this IP. Bringing in the younger audience, you get to see the highlight reels. Maybe it makes you interested in wanting to go back then and, seeing all the other movies and, stories, and now video games like Alien Isolation, as the game kind of had that same retro feel, and it's now making kind of a larger comeback because of the VR mods that are being implemented into it. Also deals with the same, themes of these, nefarious robots gone awry, and also the terrifying xenomorph. And, when you're experiencing it in VR, it's a very, it's a lot more of an intimate experience. And I will probably in a future video do a playthrough of that one as well. A lot of other YouTubers have, so if you're quick to want to try to see what that looks like, you can jump into that. But there was an Alien 3 game that was released for I think the Super Nintendo and Genesis, as a 2D platform puzzler, like amazing. There's been a lot of really good stuff outside of the movies, that dive into this world. The comics are great. They are largely all dealing with being centered around the xenomorph, because that's what we expect from seeing an Alien movie. But let's get past the expectations so we can get into the unknown and really start diving into some of those. So anyways, those are my thoughts. And I will, obviously I'm very interested, very passionate, I guess, about this. This universe, this IP has been with me forever. Huge fans of it. So all of this is in the love of wanting to see more of this. And I hope to one day be able to work in this universe, because those are my ideas that I want to try to expand on. But if others can also do that as well, and all that, it would be amazing, because then we get to have an incredible diversity as far as those ideas being able to be expanded on. And we're, as a sci-fi nut, the power of what if is to me is the energy that keeps these kinds of things alive. So thanks for watching. If you've made it this far, like, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff. I will be going into future movies very soon. I'm actually getting ready to watch Oddity, and very excited about that one. And I have some tech reviews coming up too, so lots of content to come. So if you enjoy this kind of stuff, this kind of just open conversation. I don't write these. I try to give my most intuitive feel for these things, because much like, I'll just go back to the Q&A, one of the biggest takeaway that I had from that Q&A was something that they had talked about, which was, seeing the, they were listening to a Tarantino talk on writing. And that talk was basically, there's the story you write, right? You plan out, you have to be faithful to what this story is. And, I think they were talking about Reservoir Dogs, and it was like, you focus on the crime caper, story, and then your inner writer will come out, and it will inevitably write about the thing that is your intuition. And in a lot of ways, I like to do these because obviously I want to try to, help build this community around the movies that we love. And I don't like to script these talks out, because I love to have this open conversation about what I felt about this movie, and then try to break it down as to why. Because I think that, to me, drives it the most. And is it the be-all, end-all? No, it never is. And, there could be other things that I feel in the future, lasting impressions or not lasting impressions on certain things. Do they hold up? Only time will tell. But as this had just come out, I would recommend definitely going to see this movie. It is a beautiful movie. It is definitely, if I were to consider the one of the great fan fiction, that's what this movie felt like. It felt like fan fiction. It felt like somebody who loves this world wants to tell the story in this world and universe, and pay homage to it. And I thought that they did a great job in doing that. So I will leave you with that. All right. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.